Blackhawks fall to the Flames to wrap up their road trip. I'll go over what went wrong and what we learned from their first 4 games.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? How we doing, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and find me on X at JackBushman2, but be sure to go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way, you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And another quick favor, please make sure to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. I know I'm having a lot of new viewers and listeners with the Blackhawks season now being underway, and I'm really close to hitting my goal of 2,000 subscribers. So please help me out. Hit that button. 100% free, won't cost you anything. And last but certainly not least, got to let you all know that today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Go and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off to the sporting events, concerts, or theater events near you. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Real quick, do want to apologize for getting the episode out a little bit later in the afternoon here today. Wasn't really feeling all that well when I woke up this morning. Plus, with the Blackhawks starting at 8 p.m. Central Time last night in Calgary, the game didn't wrap up till 11. I was up till like 12:30 or 1 doing post-game stuff, so didn't get the best night's sleep either. So yes, I do apologize, but better late than never, as they say. And to kick things off here on today's episode, of course, the Blackhawks wrapped up their season-opening 4-game road trip with a matchup in Calgary against the undefeated Flames last night. And even though the Blackhawks weren't able to get a really big 2 points and came out on the losing end of the outcome, it was yet another pretty solid road performance. And ever since that pretty lackluster 5-2 defeat to the Utah Hockey Club to open up the season, the Blackhawks, considering they've been on the road and who they've been playing against, I've thought they've put together 3 pretty nice outings, all things considered, here in a row. Going into Winnipeg, a tough place, and knowing the Jets still haven't lost yet this year in regulation for the Hawks to go and pick up their first point of the season, even though it did feel like they let a win slip out of their grasp. That was nice. Then, of course, they go and beat the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday night, even though the Oilers are going through their handful of struggles again here early on in the season. Always nice to defeat the defending Western Conference champs in their building. And then the undefeated Calgary Flames, the Blackhawks, were in this game from start to finish. They just ultimately couldn't muster up enough offensively against a red-hot Dustin Wolf in net. He wound up stopping 31 of the 32 shots that the Blackhawks put on him. First time this year that the Blackhawks have reached the 30-shot plateau. First time they have also outdueled their opponent in terms of shots on goal. They led in a lot of the major 5-on-5 categories. So even though it was a loss, it was a pretty sound game from the Blackhawks and kind of a defensive goalie battle, if you will. Peter Mrazek, I thought, was just as good as Dustin Wolf. Stopped 23 of the 25 shots that he faced. Offense just ultimately kind of let him down a little bit. But as far as what went wrong for the Blackhawks in this game, as I'll be talking about following every Blackhawks loss, when they win, I'll be talking about what went right. What went wrong for the Blackhawks was they shot themselves in the foot in the second period. They did a really nice job of responding right back after Calgary opened up the scoring, just 11 seconds, or 10 seconds actually, after Matt Coronado's opening goal. Nick Foligno ties the game up 1-1 with a nifty little redirect, and then felt like the Blackhawks had some energy going out of the first intermission. They really were pushing the pace early on in the second. They actually had a 9-3 advantage in shots on goal through the opening 11 minutes of the middle frame, but then they just got themselves in penalty trouble. And even though their first kill was outstanding, they were hounding the puck, being super aggressive. Joey Anderson wound up with the semi-breakaway opportunity. They were the team with the better of the scoring chances during that 2-minute stretch, but when you play with fire enough, eventually you're going to get burnt. Wink, wink. See what I did there? The Hawks wind up taking 3 consecutive penalties in the second period. One of them when Calgary already had a man advantage. So it was a 6-on-4 delayed penalty, delayed extra man out there for Calgary. And then Andrei Kuzmenko redirects a shot. That winds up being the game-winning goal for the Flames. Matt Coronado adds the empty netter for his second, and that sealed the deal. 3-1 final. So the Blackhawks felt like with the game really up in the air, right for the taking, they kind of gave it away to the Flames a little bit because they couldn't stay out of the penalty box in the second period. And then the third just weren't able to kind of generate enough desperation late to go and tie that game. So even though it was a loss for the Blackhawks and they come out of their season opening road trip with a 1-2-1 record, would have loved for them to get at least 1 point in this game last night against Calgary. Their all-together effort, especially in the opening 35 minutes, I thought was pretty solid. And then even in the third, I didn't think they were that bad either. Not sure if I'm going to call it their first full 60-minute effort of the year because it came in a loss and they're in the second period. They didn't do themselves any favors. But if the Blackhawks continue to play this style of hockey, especially as they return back to the United Center, they got some winnable games coming up against the San Jose Sharks and then the Buffalo Sabres, who are off to a slow start this year on Saturday as well. If they keep playing that style of hockey, I think they're going to be racking up 2 points, hopefully here soon a little bit more frequently than we saw on that road trip. But there are my initial takeaways from the Blackhawks. 3-1 loss in Calgary last night. Going to take the first break on today's show, but when I return, I'll take a look back at my 3 keys to victory for last night's game, and we'll also discuss what we learned from the Blackhawks season opening road trip. But first, I got to talk to you all real quick about Game Time. Hockey season has officially gotten underway, and I cannot wait to get back to the United Center on Thursday. Here in Chelsea Dagger, grabbing a cold beverage and enjoying the atmosphere at the Madhouse. And I know many of you Blackhawks fans who are watching or listening to this feel the exact same way that I do, and that's why I got to talk to you all about Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature that they've introduced called Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets to your favorite live events, not just hockey games, even easier. And you all know this spiel by now, right? If you're a reoccurring listener or viewer of the show. But I personally have used Game Time for probably close to 10 years now at this point, when I was back in high school, going to the United Center to watch the Blackhawks in their heyday. And I still use it when I'm going down to the UC to this very day, or when I'm going to catch a Cubs game down at Wrigley, or even if I'm traveling in another city and want to go see a comedy event or a concert with one of my friends. I always make sure to check out Game Time first because it's the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way for you to purchase your tickets. I highly recommend you all go and download the Game Time app, and when you do, create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $20 off with your first deposit. Yes, you can get $20 off to come see Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks during their upcoming 4-game homestand. All you got to do, download Game Time, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time. I also got to talk to you all about a new sponsor here for the Locked On Podcast Network, which is Prize Picks. I'm sure you're all familiar with Prize Picks by now, right? Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way for you to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So when the Blackhawks open up things at the United Center tomorrow against San Jose, I'm going Connor Bedard over 0.5 points, and I'm going Teuvo Teravainen over 2.5 shots. Make sure to go and check out Prize Picks, and when you do, use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps, and you'll get $50 instantly when you put $5 down. And one of my favorite things about Prize Picks is that it's the only real daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. So if one of your players goes down, your lineup stays in play even if they get hurt. So make sure to go and take advantage of this offer right now by visiting Prize Picks or downloading the Prize Picks app and use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps after putting $5 down, and you'll get $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, just want to say thank you to everyone who made Locked On Blackhawks their very first listen here to start off your day. Now for a second listen, go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where the action never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. And you can easily find the link to Locked On NHL down in the description of this video, or you can simply search on YouTube and wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, looking back at the 3 keys to victory I laid out for the Blackhawks in Calgary that I went through on yesterday's episode, something I'm going to be doing following every Blackhawks game this year as well. My first key to victory for the Blackhawks was to stay structured defensively, and I honestly thought they did a pretty good job at this altogether, especially the Alec Martinez, Seth Jones top pairing for the Blackhawks. They were really, really solid on the back end and were actually the 2 highest game scores for the Blackhawks last night against the Flames. So really good stuff out of that pairing. And altogether, the Blackhawks, they weren't Swiss cheese out there. They weren't given odd man rush after odd man rush. Not too many high danger opportunities, I thought. They were a little scrambly in the opening 20 minutes and kind of had to get settled in following some poor defensive zone decisions and some bad passes that didn't wind up getting out of their own end. But I thought they cleaned it up altogether, and it wasn't a poor defensive game by any means. I mean, they only gave up 2 goals in this one, and only one of them came at 5-on-5. So hard to be mad about the Blackhawks in terms of their defensive effort last night. My second key to victory was to win the special teams battle. And this is where we can nitpick the Blackhawks last night, because if they had won the special teams battle, odds are they come away from this game with 2 points. But the power play wasn't able to carry over what they established on Saturday in Edmonton, where they went 3 for 3. Hawks man advantage came up empty on both of their opportunities, and they went 2 for 3 on the penalty kill. As I referenced earlier, they took 3 consecutive penalties there in the middle frame, and Calgary wound up converting on one of them, Andrei Kuzmenko. That ended up being the game-winning goal. That ended up being the difference in this game. So sad that the Blackhawks weren't able to kind of dominate the special teams department like they did in their game prior in Edmonton. It's not like it was horrendous or anything, but in tight-knit, close contested games, those are what can make all the difference. And then my third key to victory for the Blackhawks was for the bottom 6 to find a way to chip in for a goal. And again, in a tight-knit, close contested game, those types of goals, those types of efforts can make all the difference. And Blackhawks' fourth line, I didn't think looked very good last night. The third line of Mikheyev, Dickinson, and Anderson were true to their shutdown status, as I posted on Twitter. Really good defensive numbers, but didn't really create all that much together offensively. Not too many high danger chances. So yeah, it would have been big for the bottom 6 to find a way to kick one into the back of the net or something like that, because yeah, it could have wound up leading this game into overtime. But as far as what we learned from the Blackhawks and about the Blackhawks here during their season opening 4-game road trip, I know it's not the biggest sample size, but starting, I feel like, to kind of get a gist of what this team is going to look like and how they're going to operate and all those things. The biggest takeaway that I have from these opening 4 games is that the Blackhawks are definitely capable of being a better defensive team than we've seen in a while. And I think that's because of the veteran additions they made on the back end. Alec Martinez, I know TJ Brody has not been very good, and I'll actually have more on him here in just a second, but just giving those veterans, filling those gaps in the lineup with veterans who can at least handle those minutes, right? We're not having Kevin Korchinski and Jacob Megna serving as the second pairing. Even if TJ Brody hasn't been very good, having him and Alex Vlasic on the second pairing, bouncing Murphy down to the third with Wyatt Kaiser or Nolan Allen, right? That depth, I think, just allows the Blackhawks to be a little bit more comfortable and not have to lean on Seth Jones and Alex Vlasic as much as they did last year, and just some of the guys that they brought in and some of the players that returned to this team, like Teuvo Teravainen. I know we've been talking about his offense, but he's usually a pretty good, reliable defensive player. Pat Maroon plays a good, rugged style. We know what Nick Foligno can do. Jason Dickinson's back. Joey Anderson's back. Ilya Mikheyev is known for his defensive abilities. Tyler Bertuzzi can be a little rugged out there, so just harder to play against. And I think that's what we expected to see out of this Blackhawks team with all of those veteran and defensive-minded additions. They're just much harder to play against, and they're really aggressive out there. They're hounding the puck, and that actually carries over to the next takeaway that I have from these opening 4 games, is that the penalty kill actually feels like it could be a strength of this team. I'm going to knock on wood because I know that's a crazy statement to say through only 4 games with a small sample size. But man, the Blackhawks penalty kill has looked really sharp, and it finally feels like they kind of have the pieces while shorthanded to do the things that Coach Luke Richardson and this staff wants them to do. It feels like they really have true, legitimate, gritty penalty killers, and the effort level and the intensity and the way that they've been playing together while shorthanded has been excellent through these opening 4 games. So hope to see more of that, because if the Hawks are good defensively and they're good on the penalty kill, they're going to be in a lot more games this year than we've seen in the last couple of seasons. What I've also kind of learned through these first 4 games is that there's still not a lot of offensive help from the bottom 6, and it feels like the Blackhawks really need at least one more game changer up front, because outside of their win against the Edmonton Oilers, they've only scored 4 goals in their other 3 games, and Nick Foligno is still on the top line. Yes, he's looked good there, and that top line has worked well, but imagine what that top line could be if they had a legitimate playmaker up there, or if they could get Connor Bedard just a little bit more help. It feels like this offense as a whole is still a little bit lacking, and it's pretty clear to me when you look at the bottom 6 and what they've accomplished that's pretty much the case. And even looking at the Blackhawks' top 2 lines on paper, yes, it's better, but they still need more help to kind of get to where they want to go. Also, definitely some concerns about TJ Brody, we've learned, considering he signed a 2-year contract, $3.75 million AAV. Yes, he is someone who is more inept to handle a 20-minute-a-night role, but he has not been very good in that through the opening 4 games. Outside of the game against Edmonton, he has not looked sharp whatsoever. I didn't think he had a very good preseason, but I'm not going to treat this like it's the end-all, be-all. We have seen many Blackhawks defensemen over the years come in here and not really look all that good during their first season. Jake McCabe is one who really comes to mind, and then remember the leaps and bounds he took during his second year, and then wound up establishing that top pairing with Seth Jones, ends up getting traded for a conditional first-round pick to the Leafs at the deadline. So I'm not going to quit on Brody or talk like I'm absolutely hopeless about his future, but definitely some concerns about him on the back end, and wonder how that's going to affect the lineup for the Blackhawks even this upcoming 4-game homestand that kicks off tomorrow against San Jose. Also, it feels like this team altogether is just going to be a scrappy bunch. I know that's kind of synonymous with being better defensively and being good on the penalty kill, but it really does feel like this Blackhawks team is capable of being much, much better and much more competitive, being in games from start to finish. I quite honestly think that game against Calgary last night, funny enough, I was thinking this to myself while I was going to the bathroom, like, I feel like that's the Blackhawks team we're going to see. Sometimes they're going to win those close contested games, and sometimes they're just not, because they're not the more talented team. They're still lacking a little bit of skill offensively. They don't have enough game breakers to go and steal games that are up in the balance like that. However, I really believe there's going to be a lot more close contested games, a lot more interesting games, a lot more ones that come down to the wire, and that's what we want to see. We want to see this Blackhawks team take that next step in that direction, and from what I saw through these opening 4 games, particularly the last 3 against Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Calgary, a lot of good from the Blackhawks. Hopefully they take that and are able to build off it when they return home to the United Center tomorrow night. Couldn't be more excited to be in attendance. But there are my thoughts from the Blackhawks season opening road trip and everything we learned through their first 4 games. Got to take one final break on today's episode, but when I return, I'll talk about some potential lineup and or roster changes we could be seeing during this 4-game homestand. But first, I do got to talk to you all real quick about the fine folks over at FanDuel. Hockey season, NFL season officially in action, and you can now start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And how about our Chicago Bears? Bye week coming up, but they're 4-2 and have a big matchup coming up against the Washington Commanders in a couple of weeks. That game has already been flexed to a 3:25 Central Time kickoff and will be broadcasted by Jim Nance and Tony Romo. It's a big one. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and if you got a hunch on the outcome of the game, if you want to go and smash the Bears money line, make sure to go and check out FanDuel.com. And if you're not already a member, when you create an account and put $5 down, FanDuel will award you with $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. And you can use those bonus bets to bet on anything from spreads, money lines, player props, over-unders, first touchdown scores, and much, much more, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Again, that's FanDuel.com to take advantage of an amazing offer that's out right now. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Segment 3, we've seen the Blackhawks healthy scratch Lucas Reichel in all 4 games now to kick off the season. Nolan Allen has also been scratched in the last 3 games, and I did kind of want to go over some ideas that I've been mulling around in my head here on the show today about what we could see with the Blackhawks lineup over their next couple of games, and also if we could see any roster changes coming as they finally return home to Chicago. First and foremost, for Lucas Reichel to have a 2-year extension, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here because I've been wanting to see Reichel in the lineup each of the last 3 games. I've talked about it time and time again here on my preview, but with him returning home, with this Blackhawks team, as I mentioned earlier, yeah, they had a nice offensive output led by 3 power play goals in their 5-2 win over Edmonton. However, outside of that, they have 4 goals scored in their other 9.5 periods of hockey, an extra, 45 seconds against the Winnipeg Jets. The offense has not been effective. The bottom 6 is lacking speed. The team as a whole is lacking speed and creativity. And I think it's time to get Lucas Reichel back in there. This should be, good motivation, or if he's still motivated, personally, I think it is a little bit of an overkill to scratch him 4 games in a row. I hope it doesn't absolutely ruin his confidence, but if he's not in there against San Jose, when is he going to get in? And if you're not going to get him in, what is the plan here with Lucas Reichel? So, pounding my fist on the table, let's get him in the lineup on Thursday. And quite honestly, why not go with a little bit more of an offensive-minded 4th line? And I know that doesn't fit the stereotypical lineup that the NHL rolls with. And I know Luke Richardson has said he doesn't want to take guys out when the team is playing well, but when you're struggling this much offensively and you're clearly lacking speed because you brought in all of these older veterans and the second power play unit is the 4th line, to me, it's pretty obvious that Lucas Reichel needs to get in there. And here's my idea about it. I know they don't want to change the Mikheyev, Dickinson, Anderson trio. That's a great shutdown line for the Blackhawks. Goes out there in a lot of defensive situations. Fine. You don't have to take any of them out. But we don't have anything tied to Pat Maroon. I love the effort and the intensity and the strength and the grit that he plays with and the leadership that he provides. We have nothing tied to Pat Maroon long term. He doesn't have to be in the game on a nightly basis. And quite honestly, to play him last game over Ryan Donato, I thought was a little bit of a choice as well, considering Ryan Donato has gotten off to a pretty good start this year. So down on the 4th line, how about we go Lucas Reichel, Ryan Donato, Andreas Athanasiou. And I know that's not the stereotypical gritty 4th line, but the Blackhawks need more speed. They need more offense. And it's not coming from what they're putting in their lineup right now. So If I was Coach Luke Richardson, I'd be willing to try this. I'd be more than willing to get Lucas Reichel in the lineup with all of the needs. And I think that's a good opportunity to do it. Andreas Athanasiou and Reichel have had good chemistry with one another over the last couple of years. Ryan Donato, even though he's not like an offensive-minded guy, we've seen him inside the top 6 from time to time these last couple of years. Yeah, it's not ideally where you want him in the lineup, but the point is that he is capable of playing with some skill or more skilled guys like Reichel or Athanasiou. So I would really like to see that out of the Blackhawks' fourth line in their next game. And even then, even if that's not what Luke Richardson wants to do, a guy like Joey Anderson, I know you don't want to split up that trio, but Anderson doesn't have to be in the game on a nightly basis. And we're playing pretty good team defense as a whole right here, right now. We need more help on the other side of things. So that's personally how I would like to see the lineup be tinkered with in the home opener tomorrow against the San Jose Sharks. Also, defensively, with Nolan Allen being healthy scratch for a third consecutive game, it's time to kind of establish a plan there. And I think there is a possibility that Nolan Allen plays tomorrow against the Sharks because Wyatt Kaiser, who's played in each of the last 3 games, got off to a really strong start. Took a little bit of a step back last night against the Calgary Flames. Wouldn't be completely shocked to see Nolan Allen go in for Wyatt Kaiser. I also wouldn't hate to see the Blackhawks sit TJ Brody and send a little bit of a message to him that he needs to be better than what he's providing right now as a veteran top 4 guy on this back end. He just needs to play with more consistency and needs to do a better job of getting the puck out of harm's way. There are options for the Blackhawks on the back end, but what I would not like to see is Nolan Allen continuing to watch from up top in the press box. If you're not playing Nolan Allen on Thursday or Saturday, send him to Rockford. Put him back down in the minors so he can be playing in big-time minutes, playing with Ethan Del Mastro, a guy who it would be nice for him to establish some more chemistry with. I think that's way more beneficial than what he's doing right here, right now. Isaac Phillips, just please call him up and let him serve as a 7th defenseman so we don't have to sit one of Kaiser or we don't have to sit Kaiser or Allen if they're not going to sit TJ Brody. I think that's just an obvious roster move for the Blackhawks to make because having 2 of these youngsters on the active roster, it's costing one of them game reps night in, night out, whether that's at the NHL level or the AHL level. I'd rather have them getting reps than what they're doing right now, watching the game from over top. So would love to see some lineup and or roster changes coming before the Blackhawks kick things off here during their 4-game homestand. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts, and to go and follow, to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it's available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman 2, but be sure to go and check out my strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.